Welcome back from a hiatus, me. Thank you, me. And it's time to catch up on the news. Here's some old news. On the same day, the president's longtime lawyer, Michael Cohen, pleaded guilty of crimes, including tax fraud, lying to a bank, which banks, and campaign finance violations. On that same day, Cohen further implicated his client, President Donald Trump. That doesn't sound right. Is that President Donald Trump, okay. Implicated President Donald Trump in crimes. That sounds right. Well, on that same day, the president's lawyer, wait, no, we already did that very close relationship with the president. The president's campaign manager was found guilty on multiple counts, including taxes and bank fraud, though these particular charges were unrelated to the president, though they are related to special counsel Robert Mueller's probe into Russian interference and possible obstruction of justice, when the president fired the person in charge of investigating his campaign for crimes the day before allowing the Russian ambassador and only a Russian photographer in for a closed-door meeting in which he shared classified information with them while bragging about firing the guy who was investigating him for crimes. He did this the day before, telling Lester Holt on camera, exact quote.
And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
And then, like, a year went by, and the potential crime guy, who was like, "You're fired, crime finder," well, he tweeted, "Not that it matters, but I never fired James Comey because of Russia. The corrupt mainstream media loves to keep pushing that narrative, but they know it is not true." And then people showed the video of him saying the exact opposite, and then nothing happened. And it was clear that he lied. And is always lying, but nothing happened, and he just got away with saying that. But okay, so that's a piece of old news. You know, we're catching up. The president's lawyer pleads guilty and implicates him in crimes, and his former campaign manager is found guilty of a little tax and bank fraud on the same day. Let's move on to something else, something a little more recent, maybe something a few weeks later. So here's some more news. The president's longtime lawyer, Michael Cohen, was reported to be talking with special counsel Robert Mueller's team in regards to the president's possible crimes. On the same day, the president's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, made a deal with Robert Mueller, re his investigation, and pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice and conspiracy against the United States. Do we have a clip of the president's campaign manager pleading guilty to conspiracy against the United States?
I'm going to get the best people.
Beautiful. This news broke today and is breaking news, and this isn't airing today. So perhaps other things have developed since then. You know, like I'm sure... Okay, so here's some eventual news. The president isn't mad online. He's not yelling at every internet-accessible human being on the planet with his greasy thumbs on his unsecured Galaxy S3. And nobody else implicated in this case has flipped on the angry man who would happily betray every person he's ever met. No, I'm sorry, not angry. He's not angry while being logged on onto online. Moving on. Speaking of a president's possible obstruction of justice, here's some more news. The president is appointing a lifelong justice to the Supreme Court who may adjudicate cases related to the president's possible obstruction of justice. It's one of those cool things that adults should let happen. Amidst the hearing for Kavanaugh, there was some possible perjury, some out-of-context quotes, some political theater regarding sharing confidential documents, risking being kicked out of the Senate for documents that were approved for release the night before. There was an anonymous accusation of sexual assault against Kavanaugh that Dianne Feinstein kept to herself for months, which seems like not a great move. And then in response, less than 12 hours later, a letter was sent by 65 former alleged acquaintances of Kavanaugh saying, "He never sexually assaulted me. Just like Sweet Jazz, you have to listen to the women he didn't assault." And everyone seems to think that this accusation is either only disqualifying or only unbelievable. And just maybe neither of those things is true. And this requires some sort of investigation before moving on with the hearing. And back to the hearing, Ted Cruz, this f***ing guy. He goes on and on about how Democrats are complaining about getting tens of thousands of documents 2 hours before the hearing, which, yeah, Ted. And they're questioning Kavanaugh's character, yeah, Ted, etc. And it culminates with this.
But it is, at the end of the day, simply an attempt to distract and delay.
Yeah, no shit, Ted, is what someone should have shouted in that room, in that moment. So he'd have to respond to it. Hey, Ted, yeah, we're trying to delay it. That's what this is. It's politics, Ted. And that has consequences for people. And so we're trying to delay it. You'd do the same thing if you could, and we know that because you did, Ted. You stopped the nomination hearing from happening for 8 months because of an upcoming election. As your colleague, Lindsey Graham, like a minute ago said, if you want to pick judges, you have to win an election. And that's true, I suppose, good sirs, because there's a fucking election in 2 months, after 2 years of the majority party pushing through legislation profoundly unpopular with the public. And so in a couple of months, Ted, some of us, Ted, might not be here anymore, Ted. And you're so principled, yet all of you conservatives seem extremely cool with a lifetime justice being nominated by the guy under investigation for obstruction of justice. And maybe we should all take a moment to talk about that fact. Somebody say that in the room, please. Just like say, fucking, yeah, Ted, the president is implicated in crimes, you see. And here he is, potentially picking a judge that will choose his fate. And hey, Ted, remember when you were supposed to endorse Donald Trump at the Republican convention and you went out there and you said, vote your conscience? But some people booed and now f***ing look at you? Remember that, Ted? Remember, now look at you, Ted? But more than any of those reasons that we should maybe cool it right now, remember when you said, Ted Cruz, that if Hillary Clinton was elected, you wouldn't ever fill a Supreme Court vacancy? Or, as I'm going to directly quote you, there will be plenty of time for debate on that issue. There is certainly long historical precedent for a Supreme Court with fewer justices. I would note, just recently, that Justice Breyer observed that the vacancy is not impacting the ability of the court to do its job. That's a debate that we are going to have. Are you, Ted? Are you going to have it, Ted? You, and I don't want to be rude, wormy little guy. And you know what? F*** it. All right, here's our new segment, legally distinct from an old segment called Petty Joke Junction. Petty Jerk Jokes 1. All right. Ted Cruz, you look like you just found out you were Ted Cruz. Here's some news. Remember about the president's lawyer's crimes? One of those crimes involved payments to Stormy Daniels. And here.
John. Here today and say the president has never lied to the American people because so many people now look back at that tape of him on Air Force One saying he knew nothing about these payments, when in fact we now know he knew everything about these payments. So has he lied?
Look, again, I think that's a ridiculous accusation.
And here's some unfortunate news. Nobody was like, hey Sarah, what the f***? I just explained an obvious and verifiable lie said by the president, of which there are many, and said, is the president lying? And you said, that's ridiculous, and moved on, as if you can just fucking do that. And an entire month will go by, and nobody brings it up again, and you just keep getting away with that. Do you think that's good? Are you doing good right now, Sarah? Like, hey, everything's calm here, okay? Forget that. It's just you and me. Do you think this is good, Sarah?
I think that's a ridiculous accusation.
Here's some more news. Again, remember about the president's campaign manager's crimes? When asked about the former consultant for a Putin-backed political party in Ukraine, the president said, Paul Manafort's a good man. The verdict doesn't involve me, but I still feel, you know, it's a very sad thing that happened. And in response to this, one of the many reporters near the president thankfully pointed out, but nobody said it involved you, Mr. President. Why would you go out of your way to say that? Oh, no. Wait, they didn't. Nobody said that. Well, at least somebody did shout, you say he's a good man, and it's a sad thing that happened. But he was also just found guilty of multiple crimes, including tax and bank fraud. So what do you mean by that? You're the president. Oh, nobody said that either. I didn't even have to check. I knew that. I was doing a bit. But that should be happening, right? Like at this point, At what point does the sanctity of the office of the president stop you from shouting, "Okay, Mr. President, but when you constantly talk like that, it makes you sound guilty"? And maybe he'll snap at you, and you can just be like, "Look, I'm sorry, but innocent people don't talk like that, man." And we all can tell. And some people are going along with it, with you for their own craven reasons. But innocent people don't talk like that, man. And I just want to know, buddy, how long do you think you can keep this up? And maybe you'll be banned from reporting on the White House from then on, but you'll also make him really mad on video about being told something true to his face, and then we'll all get to see that. If you make a scene in front of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the only negative consequence is that you won't be physically in the room anymore when she lies to your fucking face and moves on with no consequences. So show her consequences for once, and just be like, "Sarah, what you said is fucking insane. What do you think is going to happen when it's over? Do you think we'll forgive you? Oh, wait, you'll just go on the Emmys. That's right. That was cool. That was real cool." And speaking of Sean Spicer, here's some old news. In early 2017, Sean Spicer was asked if the president thinks climate change is a hoax, because he has said that before. And Sean Spicer never got back to us, even after he was asked again and again. And there's still no answer to that question that has stopped being asked, despite so many anti-environmental policies implemented by the administration. So speaking of that, here's some more news. After record temperatures again this year, still, the tropics are alarmingly active this year, again, still. And so the president reminisced about what a great, quote, unsung success he did with Puerto Rico. And he talked like he talks about things. And this would have been a great time to say, "Hey, almost 3,000 people died due to the hurricane there." And then we could see him not having known that and reacting to it in real time, instead of getting his fucking tweets about it all day. Oh, and here's some fucking news. FEMA is going to test out a new feature that will be able to send direct messages from the president straight into your phone. It's happening this week, people. He's going to make everyone's brains as broken as his own at all costs. Well, maybe $10 million less than all costs, because here's some news. The president moved that amount of money from FEMA to ICE. Cool, cool. That makes sense, since his idea of a humanitarian effort is to invade a country and take half of their oil as payment, his words. Though FEMA did state that the change will not affect their rescue efforts in the Carolinas. Here's just in news. The Department of Homeland Security has also moved $169 million from other programs to ICE, from like $29 million from the Coast Guard, which might have been useful for the hurricane season, in order to meet the president's deportation demands, including putting currently more than 13,000 migrant children in little camps, and now the deportation of naturalized citizens and rescinding passports at the border. But sorry, that has nothing to do with climate change. Kicking people out, hoarding resources, securing borders, building a wall. I'm sure that has nothing to do with the militarization of a country preparing for climate change. It's also a hoax created by the Chinese. And here's a suggestion to anyone in a room with the president and a camera. Ask him if he thinks climate change is a hoax invented by the Chinese, like he has stated before. And if so, how come at his golf course in Scotland did he install a seawall citing rising sea levels due to climate change? How come, Mr. President, I do declare, good sir? Oh, and speaking of hoaxes, here's another news. The president is denying the amount of people who died in the aftermath of the hurricane in Puerto Rico, which, as I've said, was about 3,000 people. And he didn't even just, blame somebody else for them. He wasn't even just downplaying the number because people who died then didn't literally die in the hurricane. He's just saying they don't exist. And I wonder, what about Puerto Rico makes Donald Trump kind of think they don't exist? It's impossible to guess. Though it's quite possible that Donald Trump will continue to say that those 3,000 people didn't die, and there will be fact checks that don't matter or change anyone's mind or stop him. Because he does this all the time and gets away with it all the time. Because Donald Trump engages in a Russian propaganda tactic called fire hosing. Now, this isn't about Russian collusion or how the P-tape is definitely real or some homophobic liberal meme about Trump sucking off Putin's dick. It's not a everything everything is Russia's fault. It's just about our president's noticeable admiration for dictators, some less brutal than others, and his love of power. Firehosing can be read about in this study from 2016, and it describes how the Russian propaganda model is high volume and multi-channel, and it disseminates messages without regard for the truth. It is also rapid, continuous, and repetitive, and it lacks commitment to consistency. Although these techniques would seem to run counter to the received wisdom for successful information campaigns, research in psychology supports many of the most successful aspects of the model. It's not like normal propaganda or normal lying, where you want someone to believe a specific thing. It's part of Putin's nonlinear warfare, an attempt to create a contradictory reality where you know everyone's lying, but you can't do anything about it or really know what's real, so you're helpless.
What you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening.
He doesn't believe in climate change, but his actions cite climate change. A couple of weeks ago, he posted a video about Google's bias towards him and Republicans. And the video showed that Google didn't advertise his speech to the Joint Chiefs in 2017 or his first State of the Union in 2018, but they did for Obama. Now, Google immediately pointed out that they didn't advertise in 2017 because they didn't do that for Obama's speech to the Joint Chiefs. They also point out that they did advertise his State of the Union in 2018, and they brought the receipts. Also, Google changed its logo in late 2015, so this screenshot in the video from 2016 is fake. It's been doctored for some reason. The whole video is several lies, and he just tweeted it out. And nobody's really brought it up since. And it's still up. And that's maddening. It's effectively, actually, psychologically maddening. And exactly the kind of stuff that piles up via firehosing. Just straight up lies with no basis in reality or attempt to create the illusion of reality. And Putin's actually pretty good at this. Makes sense, former head of the KGB, probably good at lying and keeping it cool. And Donald Trump isn't. He engages in firehosing primarily on Twitter and in his rallies where he's not confronted. But he's also a dumb person and a bad liar. When he's pressed, he can't handle it. He gets flustered because he's a dumb person and a bad liar. Here he is being interviewed by John Dickerson about his claims that Obama is sick and bad for his evidence-less surveillance claims.
You saw what happened with surveillance, and I think that was inappropriate.
What does that mean, sir?
You can figure that out yourself.
Well, the reason I asked is you said you called him sick and bad.
Look, you can figure it out yourself. He was very nice to me with words, and when I was with him, but after that there has been no relationship.
But you stand by that claim about him?
I don't stand by anything. I just, you can take it the way you want.
You can take it anyway, said the president. You can take it any way. No shame, no consequence, just you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe. There's no truth. And the problem, of course, is that he's the president, as John points out.
I just wanted to find out, though, you're the president of the United States. You said he was sick and bad because he had tapped you.
You can take any way, you can take it any way you want.
But I'm asking you, because you don't want it to be fake news. I want to hear it from President Trump.
You don't have to ask me.
Why not?
Because I have my own opinions, you can have your own opinions.
But I want to know your opinions. You're the president of the United States.
It's enough. Thank you.
That's a good moment. We need more of this. That's a moment where the president is visibly making up something. He's challenged on it to his face, and when he panics, like, well, you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe, he's reminded that his words matter because he's the president. So of course his words matter, and he can't grapple with that, because as much as he loves power, he hates being held accountable for it, or being reminded that he should be, or being reminded that he's the president, which he never wanted to be. Confront him and have material with you, because he can just say whatever and move on. For example, here's some really old news. During his presidential campaign, Donald Trump repeatedly said that he never said we should go into Libya.
He said I was in favor of Libya? I never discussed that subject.
When in fact, the first video he ever uploaded to YouTube features him saying that we should. Earlier, when I mentioned the humanitarian effort of going into a country and taking half of their oil, that's where that came from. And hey, maybe that has something to do with reports that he's considering invading Venezuela, an oil-rich country, the most oil-rich country. But But anyway, Donald Trump, according to Donald Trump, never said we should go into Libya. Can we, really quick, show literally the first minute of his entire YouTube channel?
We should do, on a humanitarian basis, immediately go into Libya, knock this guy out very quickly, very surgically, very effectively, and save the lives. After it's all done, we go to the protesters who end up running the country. They're going to like us a lot better than they will if we don't do it. More importantly, we're going to save lives. And we should then say, by the way, from all of your oil, we want reimbursement.
And it would have been cool if, when someone brought this up, maybe have this video on your phone ready to play? Like when you're trying to prove a lie, of which there are many, show the video, of which there are many, to his face. Get your journalism buddies to roll in the overhead, put a transparency on there, and blast it in his greatest memory of all time having dumb f***ing face. Have everybody play it. You all have phones. There are ways to challenge the president that aren't whatever everyone's been doing. And they're more effective. Show him for what he is. When he freaks out, remind him that he's the president to his face, and that the truth is especially important because he's the president. And he will become scared like a bunny and walk away from you, sit down at his desk in silence, and shuffle through blank papers as if he's working.
It's enough. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Imagine something like that. Ridiculous. Thank you so much for watching that video. I'm sorry it was more angry than funny, and I'm sorry we didn't get through all of the news. Maybe next time. Make sure to like and subscribe and visit our Patreon at the Patreon, some more news, and listen to our podcast, even more news, and just keep supporting the video that you like, which is this one.